Intoxicating substances have been used since the Stone Age. Humans' desire to alter their mind is never going to change. Substances can be used to fit in, to escape, to relax, to relieve boredom, to seem grown up, to rebel, to promote creativity, for spirituality, to feel euphoric, or as a medication. While one user of a psychedelic mushroom gets high on the drug, another is using it as part of their religion. Another user is abusing Oxycontin, while another person is properly using it to help with the pains of cancer. The line between medicating and using is often very hazy. This is where the laws and regulation come into play. Europe, as compared with the US, has much more lenient laws and progressive programs for users to rehabilitate. Portugal is the most progressive nation in this aspect. The laws are quite contrary to our lock 'em up attitude here in the United States. Rehabilitation programs are a much needed change to many law enforcement systems. Although these more lenient policies are intended to help, there are still some negative repercussions inherent in them. Portugal's drug policies are an example for every country to take into consideration when adopting or changing policies. Portugal decriminalized possession of certain quantities of drugs back in 2001. Decriminalized does not mean legalized. The change is to promote rehabilitation and get rid of jail sentences. If you put a bunch of rocket scientists into a room, then you are going to get a discussion about building rockets. If you put drug addicts into a room, jail, then you are going to get discussions about using drugs. A person can have possession of a gram of heroin, 2 grams of cocaine, 5 grams of hash, or a gram of methamphetamine or ecstasy without the fear of jail time. These are relatively small quantities, but it pushes the fact that dealers should be held more liable than the users. The laws of drug trafficking are unchanged. Law enforcement can now focus on tracking out the drug dealers without having to worry so much about wasting time with the users. It's attempting to make the people aware of the truth that a drug addiction is a sickness rather than a crime. The development of an addiction is influenced by multiple biological, familial, psychological, and socio-cultural factors. If a person is addicted to drugs, we can see that it's most likely not by choice. Most of the factors that contribute to creating a drug addict are not a conscious choice by the drug user. Society needs to be held accountable as well as the addict. This makes it a public health issue rather than a criminal issue. A person getting caught is brought in front of a dissuasion commission, which includes a 3-man team of at least 1 lawyer or a judge and at least 1 healthcare provider or social worker. Then this panel will have the option of recommending treatment, a small fine, or no sanction at all. The new laws have doubled the amount of people attending rehab. These new laws don't scare people into the underground as the old ones had. The new HIV rates have dropped 17%, overdose deaths have dropped in half, and the number of new addicts is declining. Also, drug-related court cases have dropped 66%, regular users of marijuana is less than 3%, and a decrease in drug use amongst adolescents, addicts, and prisoners. A drug slum in Lisbon, known as Casal Bentoso, has been demolished from once a drug slum with addicts shooting up and dying in the street to an ordinary blue-collared community. There are needle exchanges, which provide clean needles, helping to reduce the spread of HIV, and there hasn't been any increase in spending. The money that was once used to lock the addicts up can now be used for rehabilitation. Law enforcement can now focus on tracking out the drug dealers without having to worry so much about wasting time with the users. Although there aren't any studies that can say the situation is now worse in Portugal, there are some negatives to the policies. One major one is the policy surrenders the idea of a drug-free world. This idea isn't possible when people know how many pills they can keep in their pocket. In the beginning, there was also the fear that the law would create a drug haven for users to be able to flee to, but this has also shown not to be the case. They aren't sure if the statistics are because of decriminalization or the increased availability of treatment. It may not be necessary for a country to decriminalize drugs as much as it is to make sure that addicts are offered a form of treatment. The overall drug use by adults has actually risen from 7.8% in 2001 to 12% in 2007. Even so, it is safer for an educated adult to experiment with drugs than a teenager who is still in development. So no matter how much we look into this situation, it is evident that there needs to be a change worldwide in our view of drugs. It is more of a social problem than it is in the individual. Addicts need to be viewed as sick rather than as criminals. The United States' 40-year war on drugs has cost taxpayers more than $1 trillion, led the U.S. to have 5% of the world population with 25% of its prisoners, created racial disparities, and kept the highest rates of drug use despite the harsh penalties. Spain and Italy have also decriminalized drugs. These laws should be able to help and protect the citizens and not hurt them. It is not possible to make the world drug-free. Mescaline, a psychedelic, plays a central role in the Hoykul people, and morphine can alleviate pain and suffering. Drugs are needed and proper laws to go along with them. The model Portugal has set forth to rehabilitate rather than incarcerate has set a great example of progressiveness on drug policies.